Hi everybody, this is going to be the second in a series of videos where I compare the Beatles mono versus stereo albums, and today we are going to talk about With the Beatles. Now, I know one of the questions that is on everybody's mind is, I'm having some friends over this weekend and we're going to be listening to With the Beatles, and I'm not sure what wine I should pair with the Beatles. And so I wanted to offer up that probably a Cabernet Sauvignon would be the ideal wine to pair. If you're going to be, you and your friends or family are going to be sitting around the living room listening to With the Beatles this weekend, I would highly recommend a Cabernet Sauvignon, however you pronounce it, but that's just my own 2 cents. So, musically speaking, however, just like Please Please Me, the video that I did, there's 3 different versions of With the Beatles. There is the 1987 version, which was the original album release on CD. And then in 2009, there was a stereo version. And also in 2009, they released a remastered mono version of With the Beatles. And so, like Please Please Me, there's 2 questions. Number one, which do I prefer, the stereo version or the mono version? And secondly, between the 2 mono versions, because the original release, which was from 1987, is the mono version. So between the 1987 version and the 2009 remaster, which version do I prefer? And so I have to admit, I had to listen to the album in the different formats just to make up my mind about it, because I've listened to them kind of separately, and honestly, the one that I choose to listen to the most tends to be the stereo version. If you're going to put the stereo version on, again, and these are just for my ears, it's louder, it's crisper, it's clearer, it's just a more enjoyable listening experience. The same verdict that I had for Please Please Me is going to carry over into With the Beatles. The thing that I noticed, and this is just comparing them back to back, is I would put on the stereo version, like for instance, It Won't Be Long, the album opener. I'd put that on, it just blare out of the speakers. It was just like, wow, that's awesome. And then I would throw on the mono version. It was like, ew. Just kind of anticlimactic. The sound is more muted. Again, because it is mono, it's just kind of isolated. It feels like it's only coming out of one of the speakers. And so if I'm going to put this on and I'm going to crank it up and I'm going to enjoy the Beatles, the version that I'm going to choose is going to be the stereo version. So I'll get that right off the table. The version that I prefer, having listened to these back to back, is going to be the stereo version. Now, the second question is there any differences? Are there any alternate takes or any alternate versions between the stereo and the mono song, or the mono version of the album? The only difference is going to be in the song Money, and it's just a very subtle difference. In the beginning, when they have the piano intro, and the mono version, Ringo is tapping his drumsticks together, and in the stereo version, he's not. And there's a slight little bit more echo in John's voice in the stereo version than there is in the mono version. Apart from that, all the takes, all the versions of the songs are the same. So which version of the mono do I prefer, the 1987 version or the 2009 version, or is there any difference at all? One of the things that I noticed is when we're talking about the song Money, the Ringo tapping his drumsticks together, I found that it was a little more noticeable on the 1987 version than it was on the 2009 remaster. Other than that, I'd listen to these side by side. I could not really tell the difference. I didn't feel like this was a noticeable improvement in the audio. I didn't feel like either way. And I, went through each song, and honestly, I don't feel there's a difference. So if the question is, okay, I've got the 1987 version, do I want to invest in the 2009 box set? Because the box set at least as far as I know, is the only way that you can get these mono versions. And so if you saw my Please Please Me video, I didn't feel that there was really a noticeable improvement in the 2009 remaster to the 1987 version. And so we're 2 discs in, we're 2 albums in, and I still haven't seen that there's really an appreciable improvement in the 2009 remaster to the 1987 versions that were released. Now, if we're going to talk about artwork, which version do I prefer? Actually, strangely enough, I'm going to go with this one, because if you notice between the 2 monos, this is much darker. The image here is darker. It's like more of a gray version, whereas this one is kind of, it's a little lighter. I feel like the color, the image is a little more vibrant. Even when you compare it against this, if you can see, and I know there's some glare, I'll take this out of the jewel case so you don't get so much of a glare. And this might just be a superficial thing. You guys might not care about that, but if you're, interested in terms of which of the artwork is better, even between the 2 stereo versions, I feel like this is a much more, the clarity of this image is much better than even the stereo version. And if you want to compare what the stereo 2009 and the mono look like, I mean, that's, we're talking about darkest, a little less clarity, and then, all the way here. But the advantage that these have, the stereo 2009 remaster has, obviously, is you're going to get more images. The book is going to have an essay about the, album itself. There's some DVD material, or, you can stick it in your computer, and there's some video material as far as this goes. But just in terms of the album cover itself, I really like the 1987 version, and I can't say that about too many of the 1987 CD releases, because I feel like they really butchered the artwork and dropped the ball. And I'm glad that they kind of rectified that with the stereo 2009 versions, because they really did it justice where, other than, and really on the first 4 Beatles album, there's not a whole lot other than the liner notes. I mean, you could argue that Beatles for Sale has a little more substance to it in terms of the packaging. But if we're talking Please Please Me and with the Beatles, there wasn't a whole lot on the back cover. There were some liner notes. So I feel like this is, good enough. If you really, want a little bit more of, pictures and content and the booklet, you're going to go with this one. And then if you want it to look more like the mono album did, these 2009 mono remasters, they replicate down to the finest detail what the original album looked like. So that is my verdict on With the Beatles. Again, I'm going to be doing both the American and the UK releases. So the next album that I'm going to be reviewing, mono versus stereo, and this is just because this is the first in chronological order American album that I have, is we'll take a look at Meet the Beatles. Is there a difference between the stereo and the mono? The artwork, all of that. So I will do that version next, and maybe there's not, maybe there won't be that much difference, but this is kind of a journey that we're all on. You're going to be asking, well, what is there going to be a difference in the wine that if you're inviting people over to listen to Meet the Beatles, are you going to want to choose the same wine that you did for With the? So there's like a lot of unanswered questions as we take this journey together. But I appreciate all 3 of you coming along on the journey and watching my video. If you've seen this video just kind of randomly and you feel like you might want to subscribe, I certainly appreciate that. And again, I love your comments. If you want to say, I've listened to both versions and you're full of shit, I'm open to that. I've got some thick skin, so feel free to go ahead and chime in with your own opinion. All right, everybody, stay safe, and thanks for watching.